Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the IEP 101, the Transition IEP, with our presenter, Joanne Pearson, who is the Advocacy Outreach Coordinator here at CIL of Northwest Florida. Just a few housekeeping things before we actually get started with the webinar. The chat box will be available if you'd like to chat amongst yourselves, but if you'll keep yourselves muted, and if you have questions for our presenter, you can put those in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to get to those questions at the end of the webinar. If there are questions that you are not comfortable asking or not sure about asking during the webinar, you can always contact us at info@cilnwf.org, and someone will contact you with an answer to your question as soon as we can. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the webinar over to our presenter, Joanne Pearson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Next slide, Danny. Today, we're going to talk about transition services in relation to what we call in Florida the TIEP, and that is called the Transitional Individual Education Plan. So in our overview, we're going to talk about what IDEA is as a refresher, and if you don't know, you'll get a brief definition of what IDEA is. We're going to talk a little bit about what the IEP is, what are transition services, when the services are provided and how, some sample ideas of some goals, how a CIL can help, and then we're going to show you some resources. Next slide. So first of all, we're going to talk about IDEA. Now, IDEA, IDEA, is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. It's a four-part piece of legislation that ensures students with a disability are provided with free appropriate public education, otherwise known as FAPE, F-A-P-E, that is tailored to their individual needs. IDEA was previously known as the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, EHA, and that was from 1975 to 1990. In 1990, the United States Congress reauthorized EHA and changed the title to IDEA. Overall, the goal of IDEA is to provide children with disabilities the same opportunity for education as those students who do not have a disability. Next slide. Okay, here we're going to talk briefly about what is the IEP. We do have another webinar that it goes into the IEP in depth. But briefly, an IEP is known as the Individualized Education Program, called the IEP. It's a legal document that is developed for each public school child in the United States who needs special education services. Now, in Florida, services are known as ESE. It's exceptional services. It is created through a team of the child's parents and district personnel, like the teachers. There may be a class liaison in there. There may be other agencies that are involved, but it's a whole team of district personnel who are knowledgeable about the child's needs. And this is done through other assessments that are done in the classroom and outside the classroom. IEPs must be reviewed every year to keep track of the child's educational progress. We want to make sure that the child is moving in a positive direction towards reaching their goals. When the child reaches no later than the age of 16, transitional services must be added to the IEP. So be aware that that 16 is the cutoff. They have to be in place by the age 16, but they can do it as early as age 14. Next slide. Okay, what does IDEA require? IDEA requires within the transition services that the appropriate measurable post-secondary goals are based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to training, education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. Transition services, including courses of study needed to assist the child in reaching those goals. Next slide. Here you're going to see a model that is used in the classroom for teachers and other school personnel. It is kind of like the steps that are taken to write the transitional IEP. So number one, they're going to conduct the transition assessment. Number two, they're going to consider the present level of academic and functional performance of the student. Number three, they're going to write post-secondary goals. Number four is identify effective predictors and practices in order to reach those goals. Develop the transition services is number five. Number six is write the IEP goals. And number seven is develop and analyze data collection and evaluation tools to make sure that the student is making positive progress towards their goals. Next slide. Now, this slide talks about a checklist. There is an agency called NTACT, okay? And it is called the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition. And they have done a ton of research on just transitional services and how to do those the best practices, basically. As part of its work, they've developed extensive training materials to help states collect data about transition services that they provide to the youth with disabilities, and they call this Indicator 13. So when you're looking at your IEP, a lot of times the checklist sheet for creating goals will say Indicator 13 on it. And so don't be miffed when you see that. Those materials are useful for our purposes today, because I'm going to give you examples here. It's a checklist on questions to ask when you're creating the transitional IEP. So when a parent is sitting in the TIEP meeting, they should be thinking about some of these things, and these are the questions that they're going to be asking as the IEP is created. So are there measurable goals? And can the goals be counted, which means can data be collected? Do the goals occur before or after graduation? Are the post-secondary goals based on age-appropriate transition assessment? Are there annual IEP goals that reasonably enable the child to meet the post-secondary goal or goals, or make progress towards meeting the goals? Are there transition services, including courses of study, in the IEP that focus on improving the academic and functional achievement of the student to facilitate his or her movement from school to post-secondary education or post-school employment? Do the transition services listed in the IEP relate to a type of instruction, related service, community experience, development of employment, or other post-school adult living objectives? And if appropriate, the acquisition of daily living skills and provision of a functional vocational evaluation? Are representatives of other agencies invited to the meeting? They may be providing services or they may be paying for services. You have to get the parent's permission, of course, but you may want to, and the parent can suggest that they may have an agency or a vendor or provider that they may want to work with, and they may want to invite them to the meeting. And there's nothing wrong with letting the teacher know that so that they can be invited. Next slide. Now we're going to look at some examples of some goal statements that could be used in the TIEP. Now remember, we want to make the goals measurable. So the correct example is after graduation from high school. This goal is geared towards education and training. So after graduation from high school, Alex will enroll at King's College, a technical school, and take a business math class to improve his work-related math skills and to advance his career in business. That goal is written very clear, it's measurable, and it's complete. Now, an incorrect example would be to just put as the goal statement, Alex plans to apply to King's College, a technical school. That goal is not measurable. It does not meet the acceptable guidelines for IDEA because it's not measurable. It doesn't explain what supports may be needed, etc. So services to support reaching this goal may include self-advocacy skills instruction, personal banking instruction, work-related social skills, and some computer skills. He may need to be taught word processing or data entry in order to complete his classes at the college level. Next slide. Now in this next example, we're going to look at this goal statement, and this is in relation to employment. After graduation from high school, Paulo will work 20 hours a week at a local grocery store, and he will be provided temporary supports through vocational rehabilitation. That statement encompasses what Paulo is going to do, when he's going to do it, how much time it's going to take to do it, and what supports he's going to use in order to complete this goal. An incorrect example would say, Paulo will be referred to vocational rehabilitation for assistance with job placement. This statement only says he's being referred somewhere else. It doesn't say what the goal is. It doesn't describe what services he may need and what supports he may need. So for this goal, he made an instructional goal that they work on at the school level in order to work on the steps needed to perform a particular job task, say bagging groceries. Paulo may need instruction on how to complete that task. He may need instruction on social skills for interviewing, for dealing with situations that may arise, positive or negative, on the job. And then he'll still need referral to vocational rehabilitation for employment supports and for job placement. And there may be other supports that he may need. This is not all encompassing. Next slide. So let's summarize what we talked about. The goal here is to write an IEP that will capture the student's goals in measurable terms. It will include corresponding IEP goals to support and prepare the student to achieve the post-secondary goals after graduation or leaving high school. It will reflect the IEP team's decisions about the transition services the student needs in order to achieve the post-secondary goals. So the IEP should reflect how the parent knows the child, the teacher knows the child, and some of the other agencies and support people that may be involved, they've worked with the students. So the IEP should encompass all of their decisions in relations to the student. And it should help the student and support them towards reaching their independent living goals, their goals of employment, or their goals of further education. Next slide. So here I'm going to talk about what CIL does, who we are, and who we serve. The Center for Independent Living of Northwest Florida serves Escambia County, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, and Walton counties, and we have 5 core services: individual and systems advocacy, information and referral, independent living skills training, peer counseling and mentoring, and also transition services. Some other programs that we offer and activities are assistive technology program through FAST. The amplified telephone system for the hard of hearing is through FTRI. We have equipment loans at no charge. We have durable medical equipment that we provide as well. Social and recreational activities, support groups, community education, and training. We have regional consultants for all 5 titles of the Americans with Disabilities Act, otherwise known as the ADA. So, next slide. In relation to what CIL does, how can they help in the TIEP process? Well, CIL can provide a variety of transitional services for youth, including pre-employment training, self-advocacy training, and peer mentoring. We have work readiness training, career explorations. We can provide interview skills, help them with communication skills, and knowing how to ask for their reasonable accommodations that they may need on the job. We have monthly peer mentoring groups, and we have a weekly social conversations activity as well. You can request a CIL as the provider when working through vocational rehabilitation. If the student is needing transitional services, the CIL can be specifically requested as the vendor to provide those services. You just have to ask for us by name. CIL NWF. Next slide. You can also reach us by calling 850-595-5566. When you call, someone will answer the phone and they will gather information and review the request. They can provide information and referral services to other agencies and other service providers in the area. And we can discuss other possible services that may be available to you. Feel free to email us at info@cilnwf.org or visit our website at www.cilnwf.org. Next slide. Today, the resources that were used for this presentation were taken in part from the Disability Rights Florida, the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the Florida Department of Education, the Division of Vocational Rehab, of course, CIL of Northwest Florida, and the Center for Parent Information and Resources. Additional resources are available at the Florida Department of Education. They have handouts and guidebooks to assist parents with the IEP process and transitional services, and they can be found at www.fldoe.gov. Next slide. Danny, I'm going to let you intervene here.
Thank you, Joanne, for a great presentation. And this is the part of our presentation where we go directly to the Q&A box. And Joanne did such a great job that there are currently no questions in the Q&A box. But I want to remind everybody that at any time, you can view this webinar again. It will be on our website shortly, so you can view this again, or you can share this with somebody who might need the information. And if you have any questions, of course, you can contact us at info@cilnwf.org or call us directly at 595-5566, and someone will route your call to the person that you need to speak to get the right answer to your questions. Once again, we thank you for attending. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to seeing you at other webinars that will be presented soon.
Thank you, Danny. I have one last comment. I just want to make a comment that says, transition planning is complicated and involved. And since there's so many dimensions of adulthood to consider, planning ahead is critical. The more significant the disability is, the more imperative it is to prepare, plan, specify, and investigate, coordinate, and support. So make sure to begin as early as age 14 to start planning for transitional services. So with that said, thank you so much for attending this webinar. And as Danny said, please feel free to contact CIL anytime you need us. Have a great day.
Thank you.